welcome to the Knight Rider episode. So, these episodes, I think I'm going to post late, like 2 a.m. or something, for my friends out there that, work the night shift. And I plan on these being more of a rambly, kind of cavalier talking, almost like you could listen to it like a podcast. So, if you're not into that thing, which I totally understand, then this might not be the series for you. My other videos are much more direct, to the point. I have tight cuts. I try not to ramble or wander on for a while. But for these ones, you and I are just having a conversation. It's kind of a one-way conversation, I suppose, because I'm talking and you're just listening. But I would think of it like a podcast. Like I'm sitting here talking to you, and I'll try to, in general, do them in one take, and I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So, I came across this tweet the other day. I'm fairly active on Twitter. If you don't follow me on Twitter, maybe you should. Maybe you'd like that. Maybe not. I don't know. And I'm not gonna name who I got it from, because it's not necessarily. I'm not going after this person like, oh, they're an idiot. As much as I was thinking about it and thought it was interesting and thought it represents a certain mindset, or at least what I perceive the mindset to be. So I'm going to read it. It's kind of long here, but I'll read it all out loud for you, and then we'll talk about it. Kind of hate Tolkien. Okay, so first comment. No, you don't. Everybody loves Tolkien. Who hates Tolkien? But more importantly, I'm actually I'm on a reading break right now, and what I mean is I've taken a detour and I've read the Silmarillion, I read the Hobbit, I read the Fellowship of the Ring. I'm right in the middle of the Two Towers right now, and I'm enjoying this journey through the beautiful Middle Earth universe, and so this one feels especially poignant for me. Kind of hate Tolkien. He took everything beautiful about Celtic and Germanic paganism, then made it uglier, and used its beauty to attack and subvert the ethnos. Ethnos? I'm not sure how to pronounce that word. Telling a story about how Europeans shouldn't defend themselves with power, but, quote, but just, quote, fade away into the West, end quote, i.e., die. Boromir did nothing wrong. Galadriel betrayed her people by suffering Frodo to live. Gandalf is an evil version of Wagner's Wotan. I probably butchered that. I'll be honest, I don't know what that is. Who insisted on conspiring to gain the ring and save Valhalla. Conspires to escape responsibility and foist it on the weakest. The moral of the Lord of the Rings is evil. That Western man should not use the weapons of their enemies, even to save the existence of their people. How many Rohirrim and Sons of Gondor died for Gandalf's scruples? The Shire was scoured so Gandalf could keep his hands clean. Tolkien was a boomer Khan, upset with Boromir that he might embrace identity politics to save his people from genocide. Boromir was right to try and take the ring. Faramir was wrong to let Frodo go. Denethor was right to hold it against Faramir. Any plan that depends on an eukotastrophe, I don't know what that word means, we're going to have to look that up, is a traitorous gamble with the very survival of your people. Substitute literally anything else for the ring: identity politics, nuclear weapons, industrial warfare, assassination, terrorism, germ warfare, and ask, why would I use this to save my people from genocide? Or ask, would I use this to save my people from genocide? And it became damn clear in any analogy that Tolkien's answer is evil. But I don't like allegory. If your values only hold when it comes to one specific magical megaphone, again, that might be a made-up word. I don't even know what that word means either. Maybe we'll look that one up. And not even earlier iterations of that megaphone, like Wagner's ring, then your values are crap, and you're trying to smuggle a false lesson in. The West needs no Frodos. It needs Boromir. It needs people who will do what is necessary to save their people, even if the innocent might get hurt. That is why the death of Boromir is the one truly electric moment. He's the one truly virtuous person in the series. Why are Gandalf, Galadriel, and Saruman all tempted by the ring if Boromir is wrong, and it could be wielded to save Middle-earth? If it could be so wielded, then sending untrained hobbits into Mordor on a fool's hope is a treasonous to the people of Middle-earth. So, I read that, and I've been thinking about it all day, on and off. And I think there's a couple big things there that are misses, right? The first one is, I'm not sure this person understands the Lord of the Rings story, right? The whole thing about the ring, if you don't know, hopefully you do, you should read Lord of the Rings if you haven't read that. The whole thing about the ring is that it is a power that, though you seek to wield it, eventually it will wield you, right? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. You've heard that adage before, right? Same thing. Like, though you seek to wield the ring with good intent, though you seek to undo the evils and the hurts, it will eventually corrupt your soul, right? The ring itself is evil. You can't substitute the ring for like just any other weapon, right? That doesn't work. That ruins the whole shtick. You can't just say, well, I mean, that's what he was just saying. You can't use the weapons of your enemy against them. That's not what he's saying. No one can wield it. In fact, there's a very famous line in the movies. I'm not sure if that's a direct line from the book or not, but you cannot wield it. None of us can, right? That's what Aragorn says. No one can wield it. And that's kind of the point of the story. This ring is evil. It was wrought in evil. It carries an evil power, and you cannot simply wield it. You don't have the power. You don't have the ability. No one can overcome it. Just like no one can overcome their innate sinful nature, right? You can't do it. You simply do not have the power. So that's one that I thought was a pretty interesting myth. And the second thing, this tweet almost seems kind of reactionary. And I understand they're saying, well, we should defend our people, and we shouldn't be crushed by the evil people, and that's the whole lesson of Lord of the Rings, is just don't do anything. And again, I would say I'm not sure you've read these books, or at least understand the deep, beautiful themes of Lord of the Rings. Right, so I'm a big fan of the Silmarillion, and in the Silmarillion, at the beginning of the book, God essentially creates the world and all the things in it, and he creates these angelic beings. He doesn't call them that, but that's essentially what's going on. And they go to Earth and Middle-earth and create these things. And there's this cycle in the Silmarillion. There's this cycle where they create something beautiful, evil forces come in and they ruin it. And they wreck it. And they rebuild it back, but it's not quite as beautiful as it was before. And then evil forces come in and they ruin it. And then they build it back, but it's not quite as beautiful as it was before. And so slowly, over time, the beauty is fading, right, from the world. The beauty is leaving. And then by the time you get to Lord of the Rings, the elves, who were the first children, right, they're leaving Middle-earth. They're going away to the west. They're fading away. Why? Is that because they're not willing to fight for it? Is that because they're too high-minded to use the powers of the enemy? No, that's not why. It's because God has so ordained that their time has come to an end, and now the age of men is set to arise, right? And that is one of the things that makes Lord of the Rings so wonderful and so rereadable, is that you see this beauty fading away and dying. And that is a much bigger theme than, well, we must use the weapons of the enemy in order to destroy them, or we have to save our people, right? So I think that those are some major themes that this person doesn't seem to grasp. And you can say, okay, well, Dylan, you've been talking for like 10 minutes. So what does that have to do with anything? Well, I think about our current life, right? And I think that this has to do with how you're going to look at the fall of your nation, or this has to do with how you're going to approach difficult things in life, right? Because there's a morality out there that's going to say might makes right, right? Look, we tried this secular democracy thing, that didn't work out. So we need to go back, all the way back to the pagan tribal thing. Okay, that works. And that's been the law of the universe since ever, right? Might makes right. So if I have more power than you, then I can do what I want, and the only morality I have to be guided by is my own, right? There are people who, throughout history, have out and out believed that, right? There's that story of the first time Rome was sacked by the Gauls in like 400 BC, 300 BC, maybe, no, it must have been like maybe even 500 BC. Well, they were founded in 500. I don't know. Someone else will probably know. You can drop a date in the comments there. But they're being sacked. They were sacked by the Gauls, and they're there to pay the Gauls off. They're going to pay them some gold so they go away, right? And the Romans start complaining that the scales are uneven, are unfair, that they were brought to be measured. And the king of the Gauls, whose name I can't remember, at least the tribal leader, stands up and pulls his sword out and throws it on the scales so they tip even further out of balance. And he's got this famous line, which is, woe to the conquered, or woe to the vanquished. Meaning, it doesn't matter if it's unfair or not, you're going to pay it, right? Because I'm here, I have power. Or a couple hundred years later, you have Pompey, who was known as the young butcher at the time, right? Before he got his triumphs and kind of rose to greater fame. And this is during the Roman civil wars. And I don't remember the exact context, but he's out and he has this famous line where someone tries to say, you can't do that, that's illegal. And he says, why do you quote laws to us who have swords? Right? Meaning, I have the power. I have the raw, unbridled, naked, violent power. What do laws and papers and things mean to me? So you can look at that and you can say, well, that's good. That's the way it should be. And the only thing that matters is strength. And I need to make sure that my tribe and my crew and my people have as much power and strength as possible, because it is good and right to be the conqueror, and it just sucks to be the conquered. So I am going to fight in this primal urge for survival and to be as strong as I can and to crush other people so they can't crush me. And then we have to play by my rules and not their rules. And you can look at that and you can say, that's right. That's the way I want it to be. Or maybe even that's the way it is. And so therefore, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to embrace that. I don't think that's correct. One, I don't think it's correct of how it should be. Two, I don't think it's correct of how it is. And there are reasons for that, right? So I think that's one morality. The other morality that I would hold up against that would be the Christian morality, the most dominant, conquering force in the history of mankind, bar none, ever. Christianity, right? Because it's true. Because Jesus was real. He lived. He died. He rose again. People sacrificed their lives thousands of times over to tell people about it because it's real. And you can say, well, it's getting a little churchy for me, Dylan. Yeah, well, maybe change the channel. But here's the thing about that. If that's true, then that affects your morality, and that affects how you're going to view the world, right? If God is real, and rights come from God, and morality comes from God, then might makes right. It's not true. And now if you want to say, well, okay, I mean, God has the most might, so technically, he's still making right. I mean, okay, I guess we can have that discussion. But what I'm saying is, on the human-to-human level, you can't talk about might makes right because a God has determined what is right and what is not right, right? And so, because God has set the rules of the universe, He has set up how things are, We can either choose to live in his natural order of things, or we can not choose to live in his natural order of things. And every single time you choose not to live in his natural order of things, it's going to go harder for you, right? So if you want to live in this might makes right, I hate the morality of Lord of the Rings, it's evil. You know, what that is you're standing over in what I would argue, and again, don't know this person, don't know if they take this exact position, but this is just what I was thinking about today. You can stand over here and you can say, well, might makes right, and this idea of mercy and helping the weak, that's evil. If they would have just seized the power and crushed the enemy, then they would have been better off. But they wouldn't, because then they would have just become the evil person. And so if you say, well, I'm just going to seize the power, I'm going to crush the enemy, and I'm going to save my people, you won't. You'll just become the new tyrant. And I think that's the lesson we can pull from that, right? If you're not guided by anything but your own thirst for power / survival, then you will just become what you hate. You will die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain, right? That's what will happen. That's where you'll go to. You'll go to that place where you are now the evil person that you fought against, that you were trying to avoid to begin with. So I was thinking about that a lot today. And I was thinking about, who do I want to be? Like, if things ever go Minecrafty, like, I don't want to lose my soul, and I don't want to become the bad guy, right? That's important. And I mean lose my soul in like a very real sense, like before God Almighty, standing before Him in judgment. And I also mean it in a humanistic temporal sense, right? Like if you just have this undying thirst for survival and power, you will become the bad guy. You will become the thing that you're trying to survive against. And I think that's a dangerous road. It's somewhat akin to that line about if you're going to, if you're gonna, before you start out on the journey for revenge, it is best to dig 2 graves, right? It's akin, it's tangential. So I think you need to think about that, boys. I think you need to think about like guiding principles. If you've been following this channel for a while, and I can get wax philosophical sometimes, and I think a lot of these late night rider chats are going to be like that, and we're gonna wax philosophical. And so I think that you need to ensure you don't become the bad guy, and one of the ways that you do that is by having something that is greater than yourself, greater than your might, greater than your power, that you are submitted to, right? And we can say, well, I have my principles and I have my whatever, and that's good and right, and we should have those. But then there's, the fact that there's a living God, and He's a real person who really acts and does things and really is alive. So I would suggest the living God over just a set of principles that's on you to enforce on yourself, right? So some food for thoughts. There's really not a lot of difference between philosophy and theology, in my opinion. They're all kind of philosophy, theology, morality. They're all interwoven and essentially the same thing as far as, well, maybe not morality, but they have a high overlap of how they're going to interrelate and how they're going to affect your life. And the truth is that most of us haven't thought about why we believe what we believe, right? And if you don't think about that, you don't digest why you believe what you believe, then anytime you hear something that tickles your ears, that sounds nice, you're going to go with that, right? You're going to be like, well, that sounds pretty good. I like that. I'm going to adopt that. And then you fast forward the clock 10, 20 years, whatever, and you have a bunch of hodgepodge beliefs that conflict or don't make sense or don't, because you've never stopped to think, well, wait a second, why do I believe what do I believe, right? Like, do I understand why I'm choosing to believe the things that I choose to believe? And then you say stuff like this, like, I don't like Lord of the Rings. They're weak. That's the problem. Boromir was strong. He was trying to save his people, and he wanted to. He had a good heart to defend his people. And I would say yes. Boromir's a great character in the stories, right? Um, Great character, tragic character, flawed character, great captain of men, right? Dies a valiant death. Like, Boromir's an awesome character. Sean Bean nails it. Sean Bean always nails it in the movies. But that's what makes Boromir great. That he was this tragically flawed character who loved his people, but couldn't see past the power rush, right? Could thought, well, I could take this and I could use it. And people that tend to do the might make right thing, right? They think, well, you just like Christianity because, you know, what was it? Nietzsche referred to it as a slave morality, right? Because you're weak, you want us to be weak. That's what you want. And I would say, well, no, I would disagree with that. But what I want is to believe what's true and what's right. And I think what's true and what's right is something that is above my own personal take on it, or how much power I happen to have at the moment, or don't have, or how much power anybody has at the moment. One of the things that makes the Old Testament unique is it's the first recorded time in history that I know of where there were laws above the king, right? Especially in the East. Up until that point, might makes right, right? Well, I have the power. I say what's right. And that's it, right? If you look at all the old pagan religions and kingdoms of that era especially, right, the kings align themselves with the gods, right? The gods always favor the rich and powerful. So if you don't submit to the king, you're not submitting to the gods, and that's a problem. Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, is the first God to align himself with the poor and disadvantaged. And you could say, that's a really terrible PR campaign, or it's true, or both, I guess. But if it's true, who cares what your PR campaign is, because you're God, right? You can do what you want. So, I think all that to say that if you're going to, again, live this might make right thing, those people always view themselves as strong. But there's always going to be someone stronger, faster, smarter, whatever. Always. I mean, that's always the case. Everybody's day comes. Napoleon's day came. Alexander the Great's day came. Caesar's day came. Your day will come up. Your number will come due. And there will be a day when you're not the strongest, not the fastest, not the smartest, not whatever. And then what? Well, then I did what I could, Dylan, and I fought for my people, and I saved them, and I did the best I could. And I would say, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Because the best that you could would be to help lead them to what's true. And simply trying to wield the sword to fix a problem. Well, history's littered with examples of people who've done that. This partially successfully, mostly unsuccessfully, at least in the long term. And so I just think we need to think about how we're gonna approach that. Why do you believe what you believe? Why are you willing to lay it all on the line for things you're willing to lay it on the line for? What is your driving motivation and morality and base point at the end of that? Because if it's just might make right, and I got to be stronger, otherwise I'll get crushed, man, I don't think that's good enough. I don't think it's good enough because I don't think that there are things that are worse than losing everything. I know that sounds weird, but I really, really think that. If we just go back to the tribal warfare thing, like the Vikings did, for example, right? And we like to hold up the Vikings a lot. Oh, they were fierce warriors. By the way, the word Viking just means pirate, right? They're most of the time just attacking unarmed monasteries and robbing people, right? But like, oh, the fierce warrior Vikings, whatever. they had revenge cycles for generations, right? Like, well, their great 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 grandfather killed my great 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 grandfather, and so now we're fighting. And the other team would say, no, that's not what happened. You attacked us first, but it was 125 years ago, and it's so convoluted, and so many people have died that the blood feud is just unending, right? You see this in certain places in the world today, right, where they have blood feuds going back generations, and there's so much deep hurt and anger that it's going to carry itself on, right? It has its own momentum. It's become its own monster. And if you're going to be a might makes right person, you're going to feed right into that. And I guess unless you're willing to go the Mongol solution and literally just kill everybody, I don't know how you're ever going to survive that, And who knows if you even have enough power, enough might to do the Mongol solution. So practically, I just think it's a bad idea. Just on just bare practical basis. Then there's a much more important, like, ultimate morality before God kind of thing. And then there's the what's true about the universe thing. And so I just think on all of these points, like we've been talking about for the past 26 minutes here, it doesn't add up. It's not going to work. It's not how we build effective fighters. It's not how we build effective men. And it's not how we're ever going to win anything. So, I hope that you're having a wonderful evening. Some of you are probably watching this during the daytime, but this is meant to be watched at night. So I got this cool red mood lighting going on here, and I got this awesome synth intro. I really like that synth intro. So I hope you like it too. But thanks for coming with me on this journey as we've talked about might makes right and true morality. I hope that you read Lord of the Rings. If you haven't, you should read it. It is a beautifully sad story, and it's one of the things that makes it so moving and so powerful. Because in some ways in life, you can relate. Do brave deeds.